Good evening, everyone. We're going to call this meeting to order. Before we do that, I just want to welcome our guests, Veronica Burchill, Marianne Dixon, and Gord McKibben, and some staff that are in the room today, as long as our chief. All right, so the time is 6:01. We're going to call it to order. Next item is approval of the agenda. The motion reads that the agenda for the council meeting on Monday, November 20th, be approved as presented. Can I have a mover and a seconder? Moved by Councillor Young, seconded by Councillor McConnell. Any discussion? All in favor? Carried, thank you. Item 3 is declaration of interest. Is there any declarations tonight? Hearing none, we'll move on. Okay, 4.1 is a presentation tonight. Tonight we have one item under our presentations, and it's employee recognition years of service. So we have 5 employees. We do this for every 5 years of service. So we have 5 employees today that are going to be recognized. The first one is Miss Dana Valentine. It's her 5-year anniversary, along with Mr. Sean Merriman. They're both 5 years. We're going to save the applause till the end. Followed by Mr. Scott Stevenson. He's not plowing snow or anything.
Not yet.
He's a good one. And then Susan Balloom's not here either, right? Not hiding behind there. And last but not least, it's Bob Dixon with 25 years. Sorry, Scott was 10 years and Susan was 15 years. So we have some commemorative pins as well as a scroll for each one of you. So if you'd like to come up and we'll take a picture with council and your new pins.
Can we clap now?
We clap.
Nancy.
Dana.
Thank you. Fancy, yes, it is too.
Yeah, just double check. Make sure I give the right one. Sean.
Ooh, I'm impressed.
There you go. Listen, you ran out of 25. 15 out of 10. Well, don't worry about the bag. Council want to come up for a picture? Nancy was sick tonight. I should have been all right.
One in each ear?
I got a 20.
Bob's got 2 there. So.
It's only fair. I'm sorry.
I'll do one of these.
All right.
Hey, okay.
You're usually bossing us. I'm gonna boss you around.
Okay, sorry.
That's good.
I'll give a little speech since you're the longest serving.
Well, how come you can't give me one pin?
Corey's got a budget.
We're discussing budget. I did forget to mention Nancy Lavalle. She's not Lavalle. Sorry, I might spell saying that wrong. She also had 15 years, but she wasn't feeling well today, so that's why I missed her. But congratulations. Save those. 5 is delegations. There are no delegations this evening. 6 is approval of council minutes. The motion reads that council minutes dated November 6, 2023 be accepted as presented. Mover and a seconder, please. Councillor Burton, Mr. Campbell. Any questions about the minutes? Seeing none, I'll call the question. All in favor? Carried, thank you. 7 is communications and petitions. There are no items tonight on that. 8 is consent reports. Under consent reports, we have 2 items, the information package and the staff report 78-2023 financial report of September 2023. Excuse me, is there anything anyone would like to take out from the information package? Councilor McConnell?
Not to take out Mayor Shankar, but just take notice of, and that's the Rotary Ham drive that they have every year. Of course, Kennedy Alexander used to always do that when she was a part of Prescott Rotary, and that kind of moved to Brockville, but they still use the money in Prescott, as I understand it, and it's a very worthwhile cause. It's $40 for a ham, and you get a little bit of Mrs. McGarrigle's mustard with that as well. So it's very worthwhile, and I always sell lots of hams in Prescott. We always get one. Thank you.
Thank you. So just for those watching at home, if you want to place an order, there's a number here for Catherine at 613-213-3416. 213-3416 if you're interested. Okay. Anything else from the package? All right, seeing none, I'm going to read the recommended motion that all items listed under the consent report section of the agenda be accepted as presented. Can I have a mover and a seconder? Councillor Kirkby, Deputy Mayor Lockett, Miss Lockett, Deputy Mayor Lockett. Thank you. All in favor? Carried, thank you. Every week, we're on number 9. Or no committee reports. 10 is mayor's report. I made a habit now of just jotting things down real quick. So in the last 2 weeks, there was a joint services committee meeting where they're discussing quite a few items. Unfortunately, it looks like there's going to be an increase there. What did we say? 5% on average from them, but it's a small portion of our budget. I went to the groundbreaking of the Sherwood Park Manor, and Minister Cho was there, a real nice fella, very dedicated to long-term care. I did have a conversation with him about Wellington, so hopefully that comes to fruition for Prescott. Ms. Young and I had a PAC meeting, as well as, Councilor Burton, where we approved some more CIP programs, which was great to see that being used. I think that's the number that we're up to now, Matthew, 12 million?
In terms of economic benefit, correct.
12 million. So that's a great project. You know, if you think of it, that's $12 million that has been brought to the community, thanks to Dana's help. There was an emergency preparation meeting, which was very good. We discussed quite a few items, and one of the things that we discussed was using the LEO or the ACC as an emergency shelter if something bad was to happen. So that was very good, and we're in the process of, I think we discuss it later on today, okay, about getting some funding for that to be prepared. We had Remembrance Day, and it was nice to have our federal member of parliament, Michael Barrett, there. I know that, you know, their commitments are all over the region, so for him to come to ours was the first time. It was nice to have him there, and it was a big crowd. I think there was 400 to 500 there, right, Veronica? And it was a nice day. So thank you. On Friday was the Economic Development Summit. That was very good. That was in Kempville. Well attended, sold out. A lot of very interesting speakers. Minister Piccini was there, and he's a Minister of Labor. He was very good, very interesting to talk to. The questions that were asked of him were questions that affect us all, and he answered them very well. So it shows that they're looking out for the little guy as well as, you know, the Torontos of the world. Most of us were at Cozy Closet on Saturday, which was a grand opening of a new store in town, and Councillor Kirkby's wearing a sweater right from So yeah, it's very nice, and we wish them well, along with the multiple craft shows that I attended on Saturday as well. It's a good shopping day that day. So that's it for me. I'll give that to you. You got all that, Caitlin, for the minutes? All right, so we're going to go to outside boards, committees, and commissions. I'm going to start right here with our new deputy mayor for the next 4 months, Deputy Mayor Lockett.
Thank you, Mayor Shankar. So like many other people, I attended the Santa Claus parade. The weather wasn't so cooperative, but there was still a good crowd, and I had the opportunity to be a judge this year, which was very interesting. And it was a good crowd and good energy, and really, it was a really good parade. I had a meeting with the health unit. We did this one by Zoom, and there's lots of work going on with the health unit. They're doing their immunization, and there's a lot that is sent down from the government that they have to abide by, and there'll probably be more to come on all of that when it gets a little bit more finalized. About it for me.
Thank you. Councillor McConnell?
Thank you, Mayor Shankar. On the 15th, I attended the Prescott Cemetery Board meeting where we welcomed our 2 new members, Trevor Burrell and Donnie Gibson. And it was kind of the wrap up, I guess you would call it, meeting for the cemetery for the year, although the cemetery will continue to be open as long as the weather permits. As a matter of fact, we had a burial on Friday, which I attended, and it was an afternoon. It was raining and cold, and anyway, I felt sorry for the people and the workers that were there after. In any case, we had over the course of the summer 11 burials. 9 of those were cremations, 2 were caskets, and was the one on Friday counted in that or not?
No.
No, okay, well then we've had 12 burials. We had 3 plot sales and 1 columbarium sale over the summer season. Caitlin did an outstanding job in digitalizing our written records. So as she explained it to me, if somebody calls her on vacation, she can tell them exactly where they are on her computer rather than having somebody try and look it up here, which would go above and beyond, but it's a lot of work, and we compliment her for doing that. The finances at the end of our year should be just about the same as last year. So the $14,000 ask that we extend to the town should not be any greater than it was last year or in years previous. Over the course of the summer, there were a number of trees and bushes that were trimmed. We found that unfortunately this has been let go over the last few years, and there were a number of tombstones that were actually buried in bushes. You couldn't find them anymore. If you didn't know they were there, you wouldn't know they were there. So we've spent some time over the course of the summer between myself and the town staff, which were very good to help me out on it, exposing about a dozen tombstones that were completely buried and about another dozen that were partially buried, and there's many more still to be done next year. We approved the purchase of a new entrance sign, which is going to give a little better prominence to the front of the cemetery. That will be placed at the north entrance, and it will detail some things that we expect people to do. Like if you've got a dog, it's got to be on a leash, no throwing of garbage around, speed limit, that type of thing. We discussed the funds that we have in investment with the province. Matthew gave a report that he felt that we could do better outside of that, and there was a presentation in our agenda dealing with that, so we delegated Matthew to look into that further and get back to us. And we had another presentation from a gentleman who, how can I put this? He makes stones out of stones in order to, well, you may have seen them around. It's a hard thing to describe. It looks like a rock, only it has a name of a company or a person inscribed in it, just like you would in a tombstone. So they're made out of cement, but they look like stone. They are considerably less expensive than normal tombstones. So we're looking into that to see if it's acceptable in the cemetery, whether it would be of interest in the cemetery. And it's kind of an interesting thing that I think going forward might be of interest to some people anyway.
Thank you, Councillor McConnell. Councillor Young?
Thank you, Mayor Shankar. Attended a Friday meeting, and most of our focus was on the Riverwalk Wonderland, which is coming up December 1st to 3rd. And I've uphanded out a sheet to each council member tonight. So you can see, we're still looking for vendors and sponsors. We've had a lot of uptake, so it looks like it's going to be a really fun event, tying in the lighting ceremony on the 1st, and then having activities Saturday and Sunday. So that's one thing. On Friday, I also went to the Economic Development Summit, and they were featuring culinary tourism. And Katarina's of Prescott actually provided the brownies, so I thought that was pretty neat for the dessert. And one other thing, Economic Development and Tourism newsletter is out now for November. And take a look at it. It features Randy Gatt, the new owner of Canadian Tire. And you can access it on our town website, and you can actually sign up for anybody that's listening. And then you can receive it monthly, and it has a lot of great information that you can share.
Great, thank you. Councillor Burton?
Thank you, Mayor Shankar. The Spirit of Giving registration is on starting today at the Leo Boyden Community Center from 1 until 3 p.m. all this week. So if you're in need, come to the Spirit of Giving, and I believe they're handing it out on December 16th, I believe. The walking track is finally going to be open at 9 a.m. until 10 p.m. on a daily basis from Monday to Friday, different hours on Saturday. And if we have an event, of course, the walking track won't be open. And there's a PA day this Friday, so we're doing public skating from 12 until 1. That's it for me.
Sorry, with the walking track,
Yeah.
when you say when there's an event, do you mean like a
Like a hockey tournament,
hockey tournament or?
Junior C.
junior
Junior
C,
C?
yeah,
But if they pay to get in, they can still walk, right?
yeah.
Thank you. Councillor Campbell?
Thank you, Mayor Shankar. I also attended the meeting, you attended the emergency planning meeting for fire admin, and was very pleased to see, we had representatives from Wellington House as well as Mayfield, and to hear and see their plans of how to evacuate or shelter in place. They have partnerships with different organizations in Prescott as well as in Brockville. And so I was really super impressed how organized they are and how organized we are.
They're the most vulnerable, right? So it's good that they have a plan. And I think if I remember correctly, Jack Gill said they practice every month, like an emergency escape and all that. So that's good.
Sure.
Councillor Kirkby?
Thank you, Mayor Shankar. So an operations update is the marina and splash pad and pool have all been winterized. The town staff, they flipped over from the summer decorations to the winter decorations, which was a short turnover span from Remembrance Day to the parade. The electrical panels being evaluated down at the marina for possible upgrades and to accommodate more dock space and potential more use with the pop-ups. There's some other items that Matthew's going to talk later, so I won't steal his thunder, but they're going to come up in the CAO report. So as far as events that I attended, went to the Remembrance Day and then to the free lunch after that was open to all at the Legion, which was well attended. So great job there. I attended the St. John's information session on the, let me get this right, the Greater Glory Garden Initiative. And so I don't know if anybody's been by the St. John's there, but what they have is they have 16 galvanized beds, raised beds, and they're 4x8, and they're going to cut them in half and make 32 plots that's open to anybody in the public to rent, I guess for no better term. You rent a plot for $25 for the season, and it's free to, at that point, then you grow what you want in your plot. Now, they're going to start with smaller vegetables and kind of get to the bigger ones as the soil gets better. They're going to compost their own soil and stuff on site, the trimmings from all the vegetables. It's a pretty neat initiative. It's 100% organic. It's a great example of a group that kind of came together. They did a lot of their own homework, and they just invited me there as information. They really didn't have any request, but you know, the beds being at that height, I think it's a great program to the whole community. So I think Mayor Shankar already bought a bed. He stole my thunder, the first one on council to get there. But you know, it was great, and they plan on actually having 4 of the beds for 2 for pollination and 2 for children. So it was pretty neat, actually. And that's all I have.
Thank you. That's a great initiative. One thing that they are doing is you can buy a plot, and then if someone can't afford it, then they let them use it. So that's what I did. I'm not a gardener. I never know. All right, thank you. Okay, so we'll get on to some staff reports. We have quite a few today. So we're going to start with 12.1, the staff report 79-2023. It's our 2024 council schedule from our deputy clerk, Caitlin Mallory. I'm just going to read the recommendation. That council approve the 2024 summer council meeting dates as follows, with summer meeting dates of July 15th and August 12th, and that the 2024 January and December council meetings be held on consecutive weeks of January 8th and 15th, December 2nd and 9th to accommodate busy holiday and conference schedules. Can I have a mover and seconder for discussion purposes? Moved by Deputy Mayor Lockett and also Councillor Campbell. Okay, Ms. Mallory, you have the floor.
Great, thank you, Mayor Shankar, through to council. So before you tonight, please refer to your printout. I had a little typo there, so I fixed that today. This is just a housekeeping item, a basic report that we bring annually. So some things to note are we have one meeting during the summer months, July and August, and then some back-to-back meetings in December and in January due to holiday schedules, and there's a conference as well. So we just thought we would do back-to-back to potentially avoid any quorum issues. But that's all I have to highlight.
Thank you, Ms. Mallory. Is there any questions for Ms. Mallory? All right, I'm going to call the question. All in favor? Carried, thank you. Okay, 12.2 is staff report 80-2023, fire dispatch agreement. The report is from our fire chief, Rennie Rainier. The recommendation reads that council directs staff to extend the current fire dispatch agreement that expires on December 31st, 2023 for a term of 3 years. I have a mover and a seconder for discussion. Councillor Young, Councillor Kirkby. Chief, would you like to speak on the report?
Thank you, Your Worship. So as the mayor had mentioned, our current agreement expires on December 31st this year. And working with the chief and deputy and area people in Brockville, we worked out a 3-year deal We thought that that would be more feasible instead of coming back every few years. They have actually updated the 911 system, and it's taken several years to do so provincially. So right now, the new system, we still get our calls, 911 goes to dispatch, but there's texting for people that are hard of hearing. They're actually working with a system where if you were at an incident and you had your phone, you could actually live stream the video to dispatch, which could send to us. So if we were going on the way to the scene, we might be able to get some more information. That's something that's still a few time out, but working with dispatch, I know just working with the other chiefs in Leeds and Granville, we're very pleased with the dispatch service we received, and the 4% amount. Basically, when you look at the bottom of the report on the first year, an increase of about $862. The second year is $897, and then the final year would be $933 a year.
Thank you. Any questions for the chief? Councillor McConnell?
Actually, I think it would be through you to Matthew rather than the chief. We've recently just changed insurance providers, and I know, and on section 10A here, it says we're required to have $25 million of liability. Do we actually have that?
Yes, actually one of the enhancements of moving to the new insurance company is that we were able to increase to 50 million at a very low cost. So yes, we are covered with 25 million, and we will provide a copy of this agreement to the insurance broker and therefore to the company to just make sure that everything's covered.
Thank you very much.
Thank you, Councillor. Anyone else? Thank you, Chief. Thank you. You just have to sign that one. I'm going to call the question. All in favor? Carried. Thank you. Okay, 12.3 is 2024 budget assumptions and information PowerPoint presentation from our CEO Treasurer Matthew Armstrong. It's for information only, Matthew?
That's correct.
Okay, floor is yours.
Thank you very much. I'm just waiting for my computer to.
Okay.
So we're going to go through the timelines, some of the revenue assumptions, the expense assumptions, as well as a discussion around the property tax part of it. So, starting December 11th, we'll be covering health and social services. The January 2nd date will now move to, I believe, January 8th. We'll cover administrative and protective services on the 15th, transportation, parks and rec, as well as a review of the initial project list. I believe everyone received last week or the week before, kind of an email outlining what you can do for submitting project ideas, as well as a review of the ones that we've completed, ones that are ongoing, and ideas that were from 2023 that didn't make the priority list. On February 5th, we'll work on environmental, water and wastewater and planning development, followed by February 20th, reviewing taxation and also starting to prioritize the project list. And finally, the first meeting in March, we will take a look at it, see how it aligns with our strategic plan, as well as a number of other documents that we have to ensure that we're aligning our budget with what our initiatives are. So ONPF, we already reported on this, I believe, in October or early November. Talk about that it's increasing $9,300, and so that's good news that at least it's increasing a little bit. OSIF, we expect that to be released probably within the next month or so in terms of the total. We don't know the amount for 2024. In 2022, the amount was just shy of 550,000, and then it decreased by about $75,000 to 475. They are transitioning to a more replacement specific, infrastructure replacement specific calculation, and so that's why you're seeing some fluctuations in those grant amounts. Some other revenues, just of interest. So the interest on our high interest savings account is expected to remain relatively high in comparison to historical standards. Outstanding property taxes are relatively stable, so therefore we don't expect a increase or decrease in interest on those. And provincial offenses, we continue to see that it's not returning to its pre-COVID levels. So pre-COVID, we were earning about $40,000 a year. It was our share from the United Counties. Now we're much closer to the $20,000 to $25,000. And so just something that we have to be aware of as we move forward. So from a property taxes perspective, and again, this is from a revenue, property taxes are not going to be revalued for 2024. So we're still on value, our property assessment values of 2016. So we're now hitting that 8-year mark. This would technically be the second update that we should be expecting to receive, but because it was put on hold in 2021 and we haven't heard when the next one will be. Therefore, there's no natural increase, just to an increase in property values. And so the only thing that we are kind of relying on is the value of growth. And then just as a reminder, each 1% in property tax levy increase is approximately $55,000 in additional revenue. So from taking a look at an expense perspective, last year we were running close to 6%. Right now, at the end of September, we're running at 3.8% year over year. But if you take the average of the last 12 months, then it was 6.8. The water wastewater agreement that we recently renewed is going up by 102,000. The QP and non-union salaries will be increasing by 2.5%, and that's as per the collective agreement, which is about 55,000. We're pleased to report that our employee benefits are going down by 1.6%, or a savings of about 5,300. And we met with our insurance broker last week, our employee insurance broker on that. And many of the other municipalities and are going up by 10 and 20%. So the fact that we've kind of leveled off and now over the last 2 years had a very small percentage increase last year and actual decrease this year is good news. We've spent the last number of years focused on changing our program and our benefits to meet more of an industry standard, and we're happy to say that we're now reaping those benefits as we move forward. A couple of increases to Canada Pension Plan. So the maximum pensionable contributions will increase by $113 next year. There's also a new Plan 2 contribution that is new this year, that if you make between the, I think it's 60 some thousand and just below 80,000, that there's another contributory amount, which is new. So that's $188. So anybody that's kind of making that $80,000 amount, we're now looking at $300 more in CPP contributions from 2023 to 2024. So in total, that's an increase of about 8%. Liability and property insurance. So we saved approximately 29% moving to our new insurance provider. That's about an annual savings of $100,000. The insurance, property insurance premiums on the new arena were $33,000, and we're assuming a property or an overall increase of 5% on the premiums in 2024. So anytime that you move companies, you go through the honeymoon period and then you start increases again. So we're being conservative, saying 5%. Now we base that on the entire year, whereas really it's only for the last 4 months. So if we were to hit, what we're actually saying is, the premiums would have to increase by 15% for us to eat that entire amount up in 2024, because you're only basing it on the last 4 months. So it's just a little bit of a thing that we do from a conservative standpoint, to be able to say put in 5%, and then if the catastrophic happens, at least we're covered and we don't have to work with the last 4 months. Joint services, at this point we're assuming 8%. We feel that is a ceiling more than a floor. And so it kind of gives you an idea. It would be an additional $50,000 nearly. And then public health, we're assuming a 5% increase, and that would equal about $4,500 increase. St. Lawrence Lodge expenses, last year we saw a very large increase. So we're assuming 10%. We don't have any better information at this point, but that equals about 21,000. And as we previously noted, I believe in October, that the OPP contract is coming in $14,000 less, so 1.8%. So just to kind of set the context of where we've been over the last few years. So property taxes in 2020 was 0% increase. 2021 was 1.25, 2022, 2.85, and 2023 was 3.68. That's inclusive of a 1% in 21, 22, and 23 dedicated to infrastructure. So just wanted to kind of lay out what we know so far, have a conversation with council, similar to how we did last year, to say, you know, what is a target that you want us to aim for? And obviously wanting to continue that 1% dedicated to infrastructure. And so that's what we're trying to ascertain as to what we're aiming for.
Thank you, Mr. Armstrong. Any questions for Mr. Armstrong? Matthew, I don't have a calculator here, but what I'm seeing with some of the increases, like the water and wastewater going up $100,000, salaries going up $55,000. Anyway, and if each percent is $55,000, right? So is there any way we can not be any higher than we were last year? That would be my.
Okay, if that's what council would like us to aim for, then we'd be happy to aim for that. I think that's definitely within the realm of possibility. My only caveat would be water and wastewater rates may need to go up more than that, just to cover the aqua as well as a number of other headwinds that we see from a water wastewater perspective. But in terms of property taxes, I think that would be a reasonable target.
Okay. If I remember correctly, from last term, wasn't water and wastewater something we hardly ever increased for a long time?
There was a period of approximately 10 to 15 years where the rates were not increased. And while that is commendable from a cost containment perspective, it does tend to not provide any buffer when you go forward and puts you behind the 8 ball. Especially when we're looking at investments of every 2 years doing a new street reconstruction, and part of that money is used for street reconstruction. So certainly so even if you increase it only by 1% over that 10-year period, you'd be 10% higher now than we are. So it's something that we just need to be cognizant of, is that 0% are commendable, but at the same time, at some point you end up having to pay the piper. And so and we are kind of slightly on the lower end of our comparators when we take a look at water and wastewater rates. And we'd be happy to do that again this year when we consider those budgets.
And just on that topic, is the increase that we would put to water and wastewater offset the extra fees that we're accumulating through Aqua and
Correct. So there's only 2 staff members that are charged to water and wastewater. So the total amount of the salary increases are very small. But in terms of the Aqua, that all goes to water and wastewater. But we do have some savings driven out through the insurance, property tax and liability premiums. So there are some small offsets there, but you are correct. The vast majority is going to be Aqua.
Okay, thank you. Any other questions? Okay, good. Councillor McConnell, then Councillor.
It's not exactly a question. It's a reasoning or an explanation possibly, and this happened before I was on council, but the reason there were 0 increases in wastewater water budget for a number of years is because several years ago, and I believe it was, stand to be corrected here, but I think it was in Mayor Robert Vaughan's term, that in order to recover an extreme expense, unlike our neighboring communities who had to do the same thing and raise their rates a little bit every year, that council decided to take the big bite and they raised them a lot all in 1 year. And that provided considerable extra revenue in that and every year following that, rather than getting a little bit every year. So it was decided in the years after that that we wouldn't be raising the rates because they'd already been done, until we got to the point where we felt, and I believe it was last term, was it not, Matthew, that we've reached the end of when we could do that. And now we needed to start saving for some expenditures that were required. So that was the reasoning behind the zero increases. It's just that we weren't being overly generous. It had already been done.
Okay, thank you. Councillor Campbell?
Just back to back to the timelines chart, the nice colorful chart. I just wondered about the relationship between the strategic plan. It seems that it's coming at the end, rather, should it not be driving this whole process?
So normally we'd have a strategic plan that we've been following for a couple of years. This one, we're going to be developing in tandem with the budget. So first draft should be December 11th. That will give council some time to review it over the holidays. It will be titillating reading, I'm sure. And so it'll be very exciting. And then we'll come back in January, start to massage that draft into something, getting feedback from council. And then in February, we would expect to start to put that out to the public. So getting public feedback, that sort of thing. So it should align fairly well. If in a perfect world, we'd have the strategic plan done already and then be working towards the budget. But I think we're starting to understand, especially after the first draft, what some of the priorities will be, and that will help inform the projects. So that's why we're also taking our first cut of projects in January, so that we can take a look at that first draft in December, first cut of the projects in January, and then continuing to refine it going into March or February and March.
Because, excuse me, that has to come for public consultation, right? We can't just say this is the plan. We have to put it out there.
It's completely up to council and how they wish to elicit public feedback. There is no set rules. But certainly, if council wishes to go through a public consultation, and that's been done before, then that would give us an opportunity between January and by the end of February to elicit that public feedback.
Okay, thank you.
Good, Councillor.
And really, there is no magic, we don't have to have the budget passed by a certain date. Certainly, I'd like to have it done before the end of April. So if we have kind of the bulk of it done by the beginning of March, then it allows us a little bit of time to reflect and understand where we want to go.
Okay, thanks.
Anyone else?
Just, I've probably been explained this before, but under the expenses, we have St. Lawrence Lodge. Why do we not have anything with Wellington House?
So there's several type of long-term care homes. One are for-profit homes that are owned by consortium or companies, and that's what Wellington House is. When it comes to others, there's not-for-profit type homes, and that would be Sherwood Park Manor. So they're not attached to a municipality, they're not attached to a for-profit company. And then there's municipal not-for-profit homes where they've attached themselves to a municipality. In the case of St. Lawrence Lodge, it's the United Counties as well as the 3 secondary municipalities in Leeds and Grenville. And we all support not only a portion of their debt, but also a portion of their operating expenses. So all of them have the exact same formula that they have to work under from a funding perspective from the government. For-profits obviously have a profit generating margin that they're working towards. Not-for-profits look to break even. Municipal homes tend to lean on their supporting municipalities to bridge the gap.
Okay.
That's almost a whole meeting.
Yeah, it is.
Right there. Anyone else?
I'm good. I sent my questions.
Good, okay. Thank you, Matthew. Forward to the lady reading. 12.4 is staff report 81-2023, 2024 key infrastructure projects. This report is information only, and it's from our CEO Treasurer Matthew Armstrong and Director of Ops Nathan Richard. Who's going to speak to this one?
Take a first crack and then Nathan can answer any technical questions there might be. So just to try and give an understanding of what we have on the plate for next year, and also keep that in mind when you're putting your project list together. So we can kind of set the table a little bit. So we have the water tower. We're very happy to say that the water tower is moving along well. Its 14th and final lift should be done this week, and then they'll start creating kind of a dome for the bowl and some of the internal works. It will be likely completed next fall, but if there's any delays, then we would commission it in the spring of 2025. We are on track and on budget at this moment, so we're happy to be able to report that. The Seymour Recreation Complex, so phase 2, that's doing the southern portion of the fields, so the soccer fields, the pickleball, tennis, basketball, skateboard park, those types of things is included in this next phase. And so currently working on the topographical type work to be able to figure out exactly how each of the fields will be laid out and how they need to drain, things like that. And then in the spring, we will come back with kind of that detailed plan and kind of make sure that council's on board and be able to start the work in the spring. So during that time, more than happy to work with any councillors that might have ideas, thoughts, questions around what that's going to look like and what we can include and not include, and how we would go about building that up over the years. So that remains open for anyone at any time, and so that we can make sure that we're addressing questions as they come up. The fire rescue pumper, which we ordered, I believe, in 2022, should be delivered in 2024. So interesting enough, we think that's a long period of time. There are now 3 and 4 year waits with other companies and whatnot for this type of apparatus. So we're very happy that that will be coming in mid 2024. And the vehicle that it's currently replacing will remain part of our fleet. It becomes a secondary unit and can be used for a number of things, including blocking on the 401, moving equipment that might not necessarily go to every call, but certainly is important to have on site. Continuing or working on the breakwater, so we brought a report to council earlier this year about a plan to improve the breakwater by the water treatment plant. And so currently the detailed design is underway, and we have a number of approvals that we need to receive from 3 or 4 different agencies that govern the waterway, as well as there's a relatively small window that we have between the end of August and I believe early mid-October to actually do the work. Continuation of the dock replacements. So next up is E-Dock. E-Dock is our longest dock at 190 feet. To give you an indication, when we did the G and H, their combined total was, I believe, 210 feet, whereas last year the combined total was about 206 feet, and we were about 250,000. So E-Dock, we're expecting somewhere in the neighborhood of 200, 250,000. It has a lot more electrical on it. At the same time, we're also going through an evaluation of the electrical panels at the marina as boats get bigger, so do their electrical requirements. And so we want to make sure that we're able to incorporate that as well. The water treatment plant filter upgrade. So if you remember back to when we went through the water treatment plant, there was a number of filters. There's sand filters, the gravity feed. And we talked a little bit about a new process, and that's using an air scouring concept where you blow bubbles in through the sand. It kind of lets the stuff that needs to come out escape from the sand, and that's an easier way to clean the overall filter. So provide a bit of information in there about exactly the benefits of that. And that's estimated anywhere from 350 to 450,000. So fairly significant investment, but at the same time saves a lot of resources, both human as well as water, as having to maintain that on a regular basis. And finally, we have to start looking or thinking about the reconstruction of East Street. We have in our asset management plan that looking to do it in 2025. If we want to get the tender out early, then we need to do our planning for it. So I believe we've already done the boreholes to determine how much rock is there along those. We did that at the same time as we did Dibble Street a couple of years ago. But with that, we'll also want to eliminate one of the two sidewalks because East Street is very narrow. And so being able to widen the street a little bit, eliminate one of the sidewalks, that's one of the things that we've been working on in our universal design, as well as addressing the what we estimate somewhere between 1880 and 1900 infrastructure that's below the ground. So it's one of the oldest streets and infrastructure that we have left, and certainly something that's important. So we can break it into one of two projects. One would be focusing from Dibble to King Street, and we estimate that being at about 1.4 million. Or we can go up to James Street and down to King, which would be about 2.1 million. So rough estimates, each block, if they're between so many meters, 100 meters to 110 meters, is about $700,000. So it's very expensive to do, and we're talking complete reconstruction. So you take out all of the pipes and infrastructure that's there, put in all new, put in a new road bed, put in new sidewalks, all of that type of thing. So, and as I mentioned, that is one of the oldest pieces of infrastructure that we have in town. So talked a little bit about in the financial section exactly how we would fund some of those, and but more than happy to answer any questions there might be.
Thank you, Matthew. Nathan, you want to chip in there?
No, Matthew explained it really well. All good projects.
Thank you, sir. Any questions for the gentleman? Councilor McConnell?
Thank you, Mayor Shankar. Through you, in relation to the water treatment plant filter upgrade, on page 45 in the middle, it says the combination of air scour and backwash water flow was demonstrated to lead to media loss. Is that the right word, media? And if so, can you explain it?
So in a filter, and you correct me if I'm wrong, so the sand that's in the filter is what they call the filter media. And so sometimes it could be charcoal, sometimes it could be sand, whatever the media is. It's just a fancy name for saying that it's the material that it goes through in order to clean it.
Thank you for the explanation. And if I can, East Street, we've already done Dibble Street through East Street, and we've done Henry Street to East Street. So those big corner excavations would have been already done there, which leaves only a big corner excavation on King Street, I believe. So that might not be as bad as if we were doing the whole thing from scratch. Mind you, rock, I think, is very close to the surface there.
Yeah, I think that's what our biggest concern is, especially south of Dibble, is that there's a lot of rock there. Interesting part is that it doesn't connect. So Dibble connects down to Henry, and then it doesn't connect back to Henry. So East Street stops at Henry and then it starts again and then goes down to King. So it's a interesting situation, one that we might rectify as part of this project to create a redundancy in the overall system. Depending on the amount of rock we have.
Are you good, Councillor?
Yes, thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Kirkby?
Thank you, through you, Mayor Shanker. Matthew, I read the report. I didn't see where it talked about the removal of the sidewalk to expand the road, and I possibly could have missed that, by the way. My question is there a side that's chosen? And then is there a side that would have less, I guess, telephone poles on it? And if them telephone poles are currently on a sidewalk, which I don't know if there's any over there, but there isn't, you would have to move it.
So we make every effort not to have to move telephone poles because they're very expensive to move. Also, we have limitations of how close a telephone pole can go to a house. So we try to work around them as much as possible. Now, with one in particular, we feel it would make more sense to keep the sidewalk on the west side. That would give you connection to the new sidewalk on both Dibble as well as Henry, because Henry doesn't extend on the other side. So eliminating the sidewalk on the east side. One thing that, and I have to forgive particularly the new members, is we had this debate when we did Dibble Street. And when we're working on designs, focusing on only putting a sidewalk on one side of the road as opposed to both of them, because sidewalks are exceedingly expensive to maintain. And having two sets of sidewalks on every street is not only a maintenance nightmare, it also causes a whole bunch of other things, such as why does my sidewalk not get plowed and yet someone else's does, and things like that. So, and it's because, and in particular, East Street in and of itself is very narrow. So if we can gain an extra meter where the sidewalk is on that one side, then that will help really widen it out.
To you, Mayor Shanker. I think we'll still have complaints of why do they have sidewalks and I don't.
And yeah, I think, we, on King Street, on, some of those major, when you get to by the school, two sidewalks make perfect sense.
Right. No.
On a street like East Street, on Dibble, on St. Lawrence Street, there's just not enough population to really warrant two sidewalks.
Yeah, and so removing the sidewalk or one of the sidewalks, we would look to have least impact of the telephone poles and power.
Absolutely.
Does RSL ever, and I know it's expensive, to eliminate the poles and go underground when we do this kind of work?
So there's absolutely a rationale for doing it. Unfortunately, you would have to change every single person's connection. You have to bring it on their side, underneath the ground up, as opposed to going overhead. So as soon as we start getting into, and generally those costs will be borne by the homeowner as opposed to anyone else. So that's where it becomes much more difficult to do so.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. Along that note about the sidewalks, Matthew, didn't we have all the sidewalks evaluated in town? And would we pick obviously the worst ones of the two sides?
Because we're ripping everything out and putting it all back, then, we want to make, also at the same time, new sidewalks are about 1.5 meters. Old sidewalks are 1 meter if you're lucky. So, we always want to put back, better than what we took out, or at least the current standard. Also, when we are doing new sidewalks and you're coming down to the ramp at each corner, there's the tactile plate that needs to be put in, all of those types of things. So those are definitely things that we consider and think about. But when we're thinking about East Street, and in particular why we were thinking the west side, is that because Henry doesn't go through, and then you'd have to cross the street if you're on Henry to get to the sidewalk. So it made more sense to put it on the west side.
Okay. Yep.
Through you, Mayor Shanker. I remembered I had a part 2 question there. So the water treatment filter upgrade, which when I look at this, I think about my pool backwash, and then you use rinse. So backwash gets everything moving, rinse takes everything off the top. Right. Is there an estimated, and I thought they provided this, there's an estimated cost here, but the savings, I thought there was an estimation on that at one time that the investment almost paid for itself within 3 years, something like that. And maybe I'm off on that number, but I thought there was a number there where the investment kind of paid for itself.
We took the tour, you mean?
Yes,
I
yeah,
think the amount of water they used to
Yeah.
clean it was exorbitant.
and the labor that sometimes I think
Yeah.
ran into extra
That's-
hours.
I don't know if it was 3 years exactly. I mean, we could ask the question.
There is a payback. I think it's considerably longer than 3, but certainly it provides a better process, better water. It expands the life of the filter media because you're not getting those mud clumps in there.
Right.
Those are just some of the things that we have to consider. And also when you're backwashing with treated water. So it's just a significant waste of that treated water. And to top it all off, you have to dechlorinate the water that you just backwashed with.
Yeah.
So even though you're just putting it straight back in to the source. So it is a significant undertaking to do that much backwashing. And it's not being effective as it could be using a different method.
Perfect, thank you.
Just on the sidewalks, Matthew, is the new sidewalks 1.5 meters, is that what we have to put in? You're putting new sidewalks in?
I believe that's the provincial standard, yes.
Standard, okay. Because I mean, if you were to do that on both sides, you're gonna lose a meter, which is 3 feet.
Yep. And so if you put in those new sidewalks and you look at the fact that it's pretty narrow to begin with, you're gonna make it even worse. So their standard for a residential street is 8 meters wide with 1.5 meter sidewalk. And so you need 9.5 meters, which when you're up at that point, you're at 32 feet. So, it's fairly substantial, the amount of width that you need for that.
Thank you. Any other questions? Oh, Councilor Campbell?
Through you, Mayor Shanker. Is there parking on that street, both sides?
I believe there's parking on the one side. I'm pretty sure it's on the west side. I know I've parked on the west side, and I didn't remember seeing any signs. I can't remember if there is on the east side, but I don't believe so because it is narrow. I know when there is a parked car, you can't fit 2 cars side by side.
So does that work with your keeping the west sidewalk and the parking? Is that?
Yep.
That works?
I believe it still allows you to park on the west side with the sidewalk, as well as if we're able to get it to that 8 meters, then we could possibly provide parking on both sides.
We don't have to take anyone's front yard away or anything like that, do we?
We are not going, if we can't make the 8 meters, then we will go more narrow there and then have to eliminate the parking on the one side.
Okay, thank you.
Standard is 8, but when we can't make 8, then.
Do what we can.
Hold on. Councilor McConnell?
Thank you, Mayor Shankar. Yeah, taking out the sidewalk on the west side from Henry to King would be pretty problematic because you'd be moving the road. There's 2 houses on that block on the west side and you essentially step out the door onto the sidewalk. If you took the sidewalk away, you might get clipped coming out the door, which is not real.
I think you meant, Mr. Armstrong, keep the west side.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying. It would be problematic not to.
Councilor Kirkby?
Just thinking about the, through you, Mayor Shankar, the parking, and I know it's too much thought for right now, but long story short, I wonder if people would rather have parking or no parking, i.e. I'll give up a bit of my front yard so I can park on the street that's in front of me versus not being able to because it's too narrow.
So we always have to remain in our right of way, because the last thing we want to do is start having to expropriate. So, because while you might have 3 neighbors agree, the 4th one doesn't, and then you're into a whole bunch of issues. So those are just some of the things that we think about when we're trying to figure out, how wide is the street going to be? How much do we have from a right-of-way perspective? And then how do we fit all of that together?
So we're not sidewalk, the edge of the back side of the sidewalk there's gotta be some percentage there that we have.
Correct. Every street's a little bit different. This is a prime example where we have a really wide right-of-way in front of Town Hall, whereas East Street would be much smaller in its own right-of-way. Not every street is a standard right-of-way width, and so it's more due to historical nature.
Thank you.
All right, thank you, Mr. Armstrong. And guess what? You're back up again on 12:05 for the staff report 82-2023, the CAO's report for November 20th.
Okay. So thank you very much, Mr. Mayor. And so I'm just going to hit the highlights. We already talked about the walking track and community rooms, public skating, those types of things. Water tower, we talked about bridge reconstruction. So they, I believe, reinstated the single lane closure today, moving to the other side of the bridge. They will be chipping out the concrete on that side and preparing for grinding and paving on next Monday and Tuesday, assuming the weather cooperative. This is about as late in the season as we can go with paving, and we know we're one of the last projects that will be paved this year from the asphalt plant. Once the paving has been completed, and we do kind of foresee that while the paving is being done on the 28th, that we will need to close the bridge to traffic that day. Pedestrian traffic will be fine, but vehicular traffic will be closed for the day, similar to what we did with the bridge rising and lowering. When we get to after the 28th, then again, they'll do single lane closures. It'll take approximately 5 days to install the new expansion joint, and it'll take 4 days to cure the concrete. While the concrete is curing, will be tarped and heated so that the proper temperature is achieved during that time. Once they're done the one side, they'll flip to the other side, and again, 5 days to install, 4 days for curing. That really does push us to just before Christmas, certainly not where we want it to be, but the contractor and the town is committed to getting it completed this year, and our engineers are also confident that we can complete it. Our biggest hamper is going to be snow. If we get any accumulation of snow, that's going to slow things down. So we will have to kind of take it each day as we go, because we don't want to necessarily have to stop on the bridge, on the rise up to the bridges, because it'll be hard to get going again. So as long as we're able to maintain bare pavement and that sort of thing, and no snowbanks, then we should be in pretty good shape. I do have my concerns when we get to into December and how we're going to be able to do that, but we're going to do the best job that we can. Town staff did a fantastic job decorating the downtown. I think when you drive down there, the improvements that we've made over the last several years with the lighting, with the pole wraps, everything like that, really speaks to how special that area can be. And so big thank to town staff for getting that transition. In terms of the hotel, its footings and foundation are currently started to be poured, and so we're happy to see that they're reaching that milestone as well. And Councillor Young also mentioned about the Economic Development Newsletter, which is a fantastic document. It gives some information about local businesses, gives some really great resources, as well as a number of webinars and seminars that the businesses can take advantage of. Most are free, and it was a really job well done. So just from a public perspective, reminding people that from November 1st to March 31st, from 12 a.m. to 7 a.m., there's an overnight parking restriction. We will be handing out warning notices over the next couple of weeks. Until the snow starts to accumulate, and just reminding people that overnight parking is restrictions are in effect. Councillor Burton also already mentioned about Spirit of Giving, and next Tuesday The affordable housing information session put on by the United Counties, Prescott, and Prescott will be here at the Ruth Evanson Room for developers and homeowners. Holiday Business Mixer is a correction, November 28th, not the 29th, and at Renegades, and that's here in Prescott. That's a really interesting joint partnership between South Grenville Chamber of Commerce, North Grenville Chamber of Commerce, the CFTC, Town of Prescott, as well as the Downtown PIA. So first time that we've brought this type of partnership together to talk about a mixer. And I think hopefully it will be something that we can start going on and be able to go back and forth between the two municipalities. And finally, Riverwalk Wonderland was mentioned a couple of times, starting December 1st, running to the 3rd, and all sorts of great opportunities to kick off the season right at the beginning of December. So planning on that is going really well, and we thank those involved.
Thank you, Matthew. Quick question, maybe for Dana. Dana, how can we access that newsletter?
Oh, so if you visit our website, go to prescott.ca, you'll find the link on there, or the invest page.
Yep.
And you'll find links there to the newsletter. And we also post it on our social media. So if you visit Invest Prescott on Facebook and Instagram, you'll see links to it there as well.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Sorry, any other questions for Matthew? Oh, okay, good. All right, we're going to move along then to 12.6. Staff Report 83-2023, the Community Emergency Preparedness Grant. From Matthew Armstrong, I just have a recommendation first. That council directs staff to submit an application for the Community Emergency Preparedness Grant in the amount of $50,000 as outlined in this staff report. Can I have a mover and seconder for discussion? Mayor Lockett and Councilor McConnell. Matthew, it's all yours.
So at our emergency management committee meeting 2 weeks ago, we discussed this opportunity, and in particular when we were going through an exercise this year with the military. They have a group that they train and work towards partnerships with municipalities and civilians in the military. So we went through that type of exercise, and it was evacuating a regional municipality of about 50,000 people, and how could we help out? And one of the things that we started to discover is we don't really have a good place to house people temporarily as a shelter in a short-term emergency situation. So we did identify the Leo Boyden Community Center as being an excellent facility. It doesn't have ice in it. It has water, heat, it has change rooms, it has space, and that's the biggest thing when we're talking about a shelter. And so we identified it as also having a few deficiencies. And so emergency power, in the case of the ice storm, it would not be all that helpful because we wouldn't have emergency power, as well as we just don't have access to some of the materials that we would need, such as cots, blankets, things like that. So when this particular program came along, we saw a few things that we could do with it. One is providing basic emergency management course training. That's kind of aimed at people that sit on the emergency control group, where we have staff members as well as community partners and members of council. And in this particular case, we would be able to put on a 2-day course. It's 2 full days. We would try and break that into a number of part days so that it's not quite so onerous on people's time. And we would invite our neighboring municipalities of Augusta and Edwardsburg Cardinal. I did have a brief conversation with both CAOs, and both would be happy to send those that need it. So we could go after that particular portion of the grant, which would be about $2,500. To address the emergency power situation, to install a full-size generator, we're talking anywhere between $50,000 and $100,000. This has an emergency generator, so does I believe, the fire hall, and we have the ability to add one at the Public Works building or the operations building. And our new land shelter and community center is also, you could run an emergency temporary generator on that as well. But in the middle of winter, when you have ice in the building and using a land shelter and community center as a temporary shelter would be problematic because it's going to be really, really cold. So we took a look and said, what are our other options instead of installing a permanent one? And a number of buildings, municipalities, organizations make an agreement with a large provider. They bring it in on a transport or flatbed truck, park it beside the building, and then as long as transfer boxes and switching hardware to be able to switch from bringing in the hydro from the street versus being able to run it off a generator, then you're good to go. And so that's the second thing that we would go after in this particular case. And we estimate it somewhere in the neighborhood of $25,000 to make those necessary changes. Then finally, to address the emergency shelter supplies, we estimated about $22,500 to purchase about 100 cots as well as blankets, some emergency supplies, that sort of thing. And so that we would be able to have those on site and ready to go. Now we are that, so we want to make sure that, we're not buying something that has a short shelf life, that we're keeping it, in a controlled environment, that we're not allowing, vermin or, moss to get in and deteriorate it. So those are all things that we would need to consider when we're actually purchasing it and making sure that we've made those necessarily, allocations when we're purchasing it itself. So that could mean, making some adjustments to where we store it at the Leo, or perhaps even buying a shipping container, an airtight shipping container, to make sure that that they're safe and secure. So those are just some of the things that we thought of, seem to fit well inside this particular grant. And at the same time, we see it as a need, not something that we currently have. That if we needed to support our own residents or neighboring residents, that we would have this available to us. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Councillor Kirkby.
Yeah, through you, Mayor Shankar. Matthew, would there be any other upgrades that we would need to do? So let's say we got the designation of a temporary emergency shelter. Would we be required to do any other upgrades, i.e. accessible washrooms or any of that stuff down the road with the?
So we do have accessible washroom. So we've addressed that side of it. Certainly, those are some of the things that we would need to consider, and any time that we would open it to accept people, that we would have to kind of put caveat that we can only house so many that have perhaps accessibility needs, that sort of thing. So we don't see any immediate things that we'd have to do, and we would just have to be clear in what we are capable and not capable of doing.
In the Leo Boyden Community Center as it sits now, is there a lifespan on how it sits now?
Now that we don't have ice in it, it was given kind of a 5 to 10 year time frame. That was about 5 years ago. Since we no longer have that ice with all the humidity in the building, we're not seeing the same rate of deterioration. So we see this easily as, my intention is 10, 15 years that a new roof was put on, I believe, in the mid 2000 to 2010. It was a metal roof, so we don't expect it to degrade or deteriorate. As I mentioned, the overall building itself has slowed in its deterioration, so we don't see any immediate issues with the building that would negate the investment being put into it.
Thank you.
Councillor McConnell.
Thank you, Mayor Shankar. I've mentioned this before, pretty much every term, but we don't own the property that building sits on, which might be a surprise to some people. We own the parking lot where we don't own the building, and I believe that we should be pursuing the purchase of that building. And I know in a previous discussion, you mentioned we seem to have pretty good terms with the administrator of the fort down here now. So it might be a good time to push that, because if we do have a lifespan of 20, 25 years in that building, it would be very nice that we would have the choice of what we're going to do with it rather than the federal government, because where it sits, it's kind of an obvious housing location. So I think it's something that we should pursue, and we should pursue it vigorously.
Very good. Matthew, just a quick question about the generator company that would guarantee a mobile generator be on site. What would that cost?
So usually, there's no cost to have the agreement. It's only when you actually activate it that it comes into play.
Sorry, I meant, okay, when you activate it, what would that cost?
Not 100% sure, to be perfectly honest. So when we were discussing this with the long-term care homes, both of them have agreements to bring money in. And so one thing that if you're responding to a federal emergency, that's or even with a provincial emergency in your own municipality, as soon as you meet a certain threshold, then they start to help fund those types of things. So I don't think it's an exorbitant cost. It's just something that we need to be aware of and consider if we're going to activate that site, what that looks like.
Okay, thank you. That's good. Councillor Campbell?
Through you, Mayor Shankar, I see this is a great grant, but when you get a grant, then obviously then you start spending extra money to make it work. So I'm just wondering, you're talking about where we store these cots, and I think if there was an emergency, would people tell them just come to the Leo and bring a blanket and something to sleep on? Because if we're gonna start purchasing or renting out storage facilities, and I just think that $22,500 might be better spent.
So I think when you're responding to an emergency situation and you need to be quick at getting people into a temporary shelter, it's important to have those types of materials readily accessible. So I think that's one of the reasons why we include it, is that we want to make sure that within a couple of hours' notice that we could set up, be able to start receiving people and having them, certainly not in a lap of luxury, but being able to sit down or lay down and just start to deal with the emotional trauma or physical trauma of what's occurred.
Just 100 people isn't a lot of people.
Isn't, but at the same time, if we just need to help support Wellington House or Mayfield, each of them have 60 people, and if we can help by taking 30 or 40 or 50 people, then that certainly helps the high school or other homes that might not have the space for them.
Okay.
Thank you. And where would we store this stuff?
So there's a couple of things. We can store it directly at the Leo. We could store it in a sea can. Sea cans are surprisingly inexpensive, well, we have discovered, and can be airtight. So those are a couple of the options that we would explore. At the same time, when we're purchasing it, we want to make sure that whatever we're purchasing, we're storing it correctly. And so those will be some of the things that we'll consider as we move forward.
Very good. And are we gonna apply for this grant along with our neighboring municipalities?
I don't think so. Certainly, they're invited to join as part of our training days, as well as those assets would be available to them in a case of emergency. But I don't think for either of them it was on their radar. So this is something that we would go alone, but at the same time offer and support from our two neighboring municipalities.
Great. Final chance, no questions? Thank you, Mr. Armstrong. Oh, I guess I should call the question. Yes. All in favor? Carried, thank you. All right, no resolutions tonight, no bylaws tonight, a new business. There's one item under new business, a resolution of support regarding Bill 21. Deputy Mayor Lockett, you brought this forward, so I'll let you.
I brought it forward and I think we should support it, but I did a little bit of research into it. I couldn't get an answer from St. Lawrence Lodge, but Wellington House has something in place already. And I assume that maybe it was something about they were separated because there was medical issues and stuff. That's not the case necessarily. And basically, they have a room, and if a spouse went in and this other spouse wanted to be there but didn't have any medical issues, they could still join them. They have 2 designated rooms, but through the place in Belleville that says who's going where, they have a list of what homes actually have things in place already. So I definitely think it's something we should support.
Okay. Councillor McConnell?
It's a difficult question. And I've known people who have been separated because of this, where one member of the couple was in poor health and had to go somewhere. The other one wasn't and didn't, but wanted to, but there wasn't room, and there wasn't room because there is such a demand for space that do you give the space to somebody who really doesn't need it, or do you give the space to somebody who really does need it? If we had homes with these accommodations for couples, and it would be one thing, but in a lot of cases we don't. It's a case of somebody who really doesn't need it taking up the space of somebody who really does. So it's not a black and white issue by any means. Forcing homes to do that is going to mean people that need space are going to be, I don't know, they're going to be in the hospital. It's backing people up in hospital, and they need beds too. I feel for these people, but I under the circumstances, I don't think that I can support it.
Anyone else have a comment?
There's a shortage of beds. That's all we ever hear about. People are adding on to their homes because they need the beds, so I agree with both sides, but it's very difficult.
I think this is a letter of support. It's not legislation or anything like that. Maybe what happens going forward is they have bigger rooms that could accommodate couples. You know, it's not in our field, but.
Yeah, and I think a lot of long-term care have rooms, designated rooms for couples. Mm-hmm. But like Councillor McConnell says, there's a lot more that need the room then. But I still think it's just to support the issue. It's not to mandate nursing homes to have to do something. It's just the support that where possible should be. And I think they mostly are all doing it anyway.
Did you have a follow-up there?
Yeah, I think I've read somewhere over the past couple of years and something that's floated across their desk where I stand to be corrected here, but I believe it's Norway spends just about whatever it takes to keep people in their homes. And the number of long-term care beds that they have is tremendously low for the population. I think that's, again, it's nothing to do with this particular thing here, but I think if our government tended to, or our governments tended to look at things a little more that way, we wouldn't be spending tens of millions of dollars in building new beds. We would be spending maybe hundreds of thousands of dollars keeping people in their homes. And I think people in their homes is going to be much more comfortable for the people as well. They're in their surroundings. So there's kind of three sides to it, really.
Oh, Councilor Kirkby?
Through you, Mayor Shankar, I might as well join the conversation. I think this is forward thinking, it's something, if you go back and think about where accessibility started, them conversations started probably 12 years ago. And, we had to start expanding door frames to washroom stalls, stuff like that, level entry. I think this is just a recommendation or a good start of a roadmap to how maybe long-term care should be thought about. Just on Councillor McConnell's note about Norway, there's actually some projects going on out in British Columbia where they are building new builds where several members can live. They pretty much have a one-bedroom or a bachelor, but the common area is shared. So they have their own smaller kitchen, they have a little living room and a bedroom, but the majority of the common area is shared. And what that allows, what they're doing out there is then they can bring in one nurse to one location that can service 10 to 12 people in there. And some are being stationed there in some of the other places. So they might actually have a live-in service that would accommodate the residents, but it's more like Councillor McConnell is talking about Norway. The idea is keeping people in homes that they're paying for, or they're buying, it's the next, you go to the condo and then you go here versus the old age home. So I think there is a bit of forward thinking going on at that level also in Canada.
Thank you. I'm going to look to Ms. Velkamp. To do this, will we need to move her in a seconder?
Yes, please.
Would you like to proceed with moving
Yes.
this? Go ahead. Do you have a seconder? Councillor Burton? And do you want to read the motion?
So the draft motion that I have reads that Council of the Corporation of the Town of Prescott supports a resolution from the Township of East Hawkesbury regarding support for Bill 21, fixing the Long-Term Care Amendment Act till death do us part, and that a copy of this resolution be sent to the Premier of Ontario, Doug Ford, Member of Parliament, Michael Barrett, and all municipalities in Leeds and Grenville.
Very good. Can we also send it to Catherine Fife, Waterloo MPP? All right, I'm going to call the question. All in favor? All opposed? Carried. Thank you. All right, there's no notice of motions tonight, but there is Mayor's proclamation for Founder's Day on December 4th. Annual Founder's Day. All right, get your popcorn, this is long. Whereas 288 years ago, on December 4th, 1735, Colonel Edward Jessup, the founder of the town of Prescott, Ontario, was born. Jessup was born in Stamford, Connecticut, but his family migrated to Upper New York. When the War of Independence broke out in 1775, between 13 colonies and Great Britain, Jessup and his family sided with the British. The fortunes of war drove Edward Jessup and his family to what became Upper Canada, where he settled in Augusta Township in 1784. And whereas a royalist, Jessup was granted 1,200 acres of land in what is now known as Prescott. He established his farm on the land and later in 1810 laid out the streets of Prescott. Hey, that's when our
East Street.
Sorry. He named the town after General Robert Prescott, Governor of Canada from 1796 to 1799. In 1812, at the outbreak of war between Great Britain and the United States, the eastern portion of Jessup's farm was requisitioned by the British to build Fort Wellington. The town, however, prospered and grew quickly to become an important link between Montreal and Kingston on the St. Lawrence River. And whereas Edward Jessup lived long enough to see both Prescott and Fort Wellington begin to develop, he died in 1816, and his daughter-in-law, Susanna Jessup, a young widow, carried on the family business of selling town lots to support her large family. One of her sons, Hamilton Dibble Jessup, a physician and public figure, carried on after his mother's death, greatly expanding the town to the west on land his mother had inherited from her father. Simeon Koval, another loyalist. Present-day Prescott consists of the Jessup and Koval lands. And whereas Founder's Day was established on November 23rd, 2015, to remind us all of our early history and shared heritage, and therefore be it resolved that the town of Prescott does hereby proclaim December 4th, 2023 as Founder's Day in the town of Prescott. Dated this 20th day of November, 2023. Yeah, you missed it. I'm sure we've read that every year, but that's the first time I actually read
It's too
that.
bad it didn't fall on the weekend of the Light Up the Tree. We could have a Founder's Day celebration.
Yeah.
Sure, economic development's thinking about it.
So the next one is media questions. Any questions, Veronica?
Just to the CAO, can I get a copy of the comparison table you showed on the property tax increases for the last, I believe it was 10 years?
I think it was last fall.
20.
Last 4? Okay, if you could just do an isolation of that and send it to me.
No problem.
And you mentioned, I'll speak to you after, it was about the bridge reconstruction.
Okay.
Okay, that's fine.
One online? Oh, sorry. One online. Okay. So there's no closed session, therefore there's no rise in report. Item 21 is the confirming bylaw. The motion is that bylaw 47-2023, being a bylaw to confirm the proceedings of the council meeting held on November 20th, 2023, be read and passed, signed by the mayor and clerk, and sealed by the seal of the corporation. Can I have a mover and seconder, please? Councilor Campbell, Deputy Mayor Lockett, all in favor? Carried, thank you. Item 22 is adjournment, that the meeting be adjourned to Monday, December 4th, 2023 at 6 p.m. Moved by Councilor Kirkby, seconded by anyone else? Anyone? Councilor Young, thank you. All in favor? Carried. Thank you, everyone. See you on December 4th. It's Founder's Day.